We promise this is the third panel. And of course, we have very experienced resource people with us. So this is the opportunity to get to know more about PR, the industry, and also something related to digital marketing and personal branding, things like that. So, without further ado, I would start with few questions. We will have a question to each one of the resource people here, and then it will be open for Q&A from the audience side. Okay, so my first question to all of you, one by one. We will start with Siddharth sir, and then it can move on to the ladies, beautiful ladies present here. So you all have built your career around narratives, whether for brands or startup companies or for individuals as well. At what point did storytelling stop being an artistic exercise and becomes a measurable business function? Can you recall a movement when you realized that a story could directly influence the growth, reputation, or investment, or even the public perception? And now I just pose it to Siddharth sir.
Thank you for that. Just checking if I'm audible. Awesome, thank you. So, to your question, at what point does storytelling turn into more of a business function, right? I think, or also drive more utility. So I think now through our careers, now the career that I've had, worked with digital global platforms like Meta, LinkedIn. One of the things you learn working with large brands that are leveraging these platforms very closely is that these platforms exist to put the narrative out there. It's a means of distribution. Now, when you distribute content at scale, imagine any brand that you love using Meta to, drive content over social media, create fantastic reels, run ads that you get targeted with. You may have seen that sponsored ad tag on top of, your content. All of this content eventually, tries to carry a theme, a messaging, some kind of a narrative that we're calling it. The most effective narratives that we see, or the most effective form of storytelling, is when there is some kind of purpose or value that it can honestly drive. Brands are very quick to create narratives. It's very easy to create a narrative. I am a new brand and I can just claim to be X, Y, Z. But in order to drive some kind of value to you, the person watching that piece of content or watching that ad, there has to be some kind of, I would say, utility or functionality that adds a little bit of value to your life. And that's what really attracts you towards that content. So long story short, I feel like in terms of storytelling, there always has to be a layer of utility on top of whatever the communication or messaging is that goes out to the audience. And I'll allow Tarunjeet and Dharika to add their thoughts as well.
Yeah, so same question, if you can answer the...
Hello, I'm audible at the back? All right. So I very well agree with what Siddharth mentioned that, being in a career wherein storytelling is very important. So I am a founder, I am a creator, I work with a lot of brands, and I've understood that founder storytelling is something which is really, really important, right? Founder and cultural storytelling. So I recently worked with a brand called the Jaipur Watch Company, wherein, they gave me a brief and they said that, we want you to put up a post. Now with a lot of brands, what the problem is, they'll give you the brief and they'll be like, we want everything from you, but we're not flexible in terms of you experimenting. So they gave me that free hand when they said that, we just want you to show the Indian aspect, the cultural element. So what I could have done was simply, just wear the watch and put up a post, right? So what I instead did was, had a picture of the Indian flag in the background with me in the picture, and then talking about the story, about Gaurav Mehta, what he's been doing, etc. So it gave that cultural element to it without it being very traditional and, very forced.
Yes.
So the question was, when did you, what was the point where creativity died?
Yeah. So when did you stop, creative side of storytelling and when it becomes business?
When you become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's the short answer.
Yes.
Right? When you have to pay salaries, when you have to show ROI, when you have to pay the bills, that's when it stops. That's when it effectively kills storytelling or creativity in storytelling. You have to really fight for it to be alive. And that is where I think the bone of contention is between brands who want to pay you and creators and storytellers who want to run a business, right? Running a business, I think, effectively kills that. But it's up to you to decide where is that line in the sand. You know, where do you draw that line? And the moment you decide that and decide to stick to it, you will be much happier in terms of running the business, and you can run it the way you want.
And also, next question to ma'am. So you have 30 years of rich experience in the industry. So you have worked for other organization and now you have started your own. So can you take us through your journey? Like how was it working for others and how is it working for your own company?
I think that'll pretty much make a Netflix series, yeah. But let me concise that a little bit. While I can talk about a lot of things across 30 years of experience, etc., what I would like to kind of, put out into the into this room particularly, that while I've worked with brands at other agencies, I worked with Hill and Knowlton, JWT, they don't exist anymore. Burson Marsteller, again, doesn't exist anymore. Okay. Star TV, Star One, Star World, Star Plus, they still exist in different formats. Moved on to start my own agency, worked in journalism for a bit, moved on to start my own agency. And then you realize after a point that you've hit a ceiling, especially if you don't have $1 million behind you or nobody else is sponsoring your entire journey. If you want to become a self-made person, then one of the key things that you need to understand is that you can never stop learning. Even after 30 years, I believe it's still day one. I'm excited about being in the industry because there's just so much happening. We are at our industry is very chaotic, especially because storytelling is chaotic, right? And there are various ways to tell a story. The formats keep changing, but storytelling as a core profession will never change. Right? You have to understand, continuously keep studying the audience, continuously understand how the audience is consuming information so that you can tell them a story in the way they want to listen to the story. And nothing could be made clearer than the Gen Z protest that happened recently, where you understood, I think each one of you understood that Gen Z consumes, I think it was, while millennials and Gen Xers and boomers knew this, it was a rude awakening for everybody to actually realize that in reality, that this is where the audience is, this is where the future generation is. So working for somebody and working for yourself, there is a very stark difference between the two. Working for somebody else, yes, you can do a lot of things there, but upskilling then doesn't become your responsibility. It becomes a responsibility of the corporate where you are employed with. But when you are working for yourself, it's pretty much a 25/7 job. And if there could be an 8-day, we would probably add that as well. And upskilling is completely your responsibility.
Thank you, ma'am. Very well said. Upskilling is required on I think every day basis. You need to learn a new thing. My next question would go to Siddhartha. So more often we see a campaign probably in terms of LinkedIn post or maybe a story in Instagram. So that is the finished product we see, a finished campaign probably. But what happens behind the scene? Like how do you deal with clients and what kind of expectations they come up with and how do you deal with that? What kind of revisions which happens? Like more or less how many times you revise it? So can you please shed a light on that?
Yeah, that question hits home really hard. So when it comes to any new campaign that we create, let's say brand X selling men's fashion comes to us and says, hey, we want to do 1 crore revenue per month. Why don't you build out a campaign, distribute it on Instagram, on YouTube, on all your digital platforms? Now, let's assume it's a new brand that most of us haven't heard of, right? You're all seeing so many fantastic brands launch in India today that are global standard. Jaipur Watch Company is an example. Why buy a Rolex when you can buy a Jaipur Watch Company? Titan today has watches for 40 lakh rupees. So, there's a lot of But there's also a lot of new brands launching out there. Closer to home in Bangalore, you must have heard of Snitch. You must have heard of many similar such brands, right? Now, when the brief initially comes in, any new brand with 5 different styles of t-shirts, probably unisex, will want to look like a Zara when it comes to the ads itself. But, or an H&M, or, think of any popular, globally renowned brand. Now, there is a reality to this that these global brands have been spending a lot of investment and a lot of money across, the entire brand, and the entire story has been built over decades and over a global footprint, compared to this new business that comes to us today as an agency and says, hey, we want to achieve a similar kind of a goal. Let's do 1 crore revenue. So now when it comes to building that campaign out, the communication for it, there's a little bit of conflict in terms of everyone wants a very minimal creative, an extremely sexy model. Everything has to be exactly the way Zara does it. Put people in jeans like a Levi's, make them do odd poses. But will it work? Probably not. Because if it's a new brand with a new brand name going out to you as an audience, the first thing you want to question is, what do you guys do? What's so special about this t-shirt or a jacket that I pay 5,000 rupees for? So there's always a little bit of conflict in terms of how that brief progresses. So there's a lot of revisions. Obviously, brand owners often want to, shoot for the stars, but there's also a journey to get there. So I think then our job as media professionals is to kind of, in the more digital marketing space, is to give them a little bit of a reality check, find that middle ground where you're able to drive functionality with the content and messaging that you do, and at the same time, be able to fit within that brand ethos at the same time. So I think it's definitely, some brands are more difficult than the others when it comes to the briefing stage and the revisions. It's about helping them understand what the end consumer that you're targeting is going to want to see, and finally testing with a lot of different creative concepts, understanding what works, what doesn't, and then trying to double down on what does. So yeah, it is a little bit of a process sometimes before the final output is finally out there, but I think if you put in the right amount of thought and research into it, there's definitely ways to make it work really well.
Okay. In connection to that, have you ever experienced a very tough client? What was your experience about it? Can you share it with us?
So I'll give you an example. A brand that I even work with today. It's a very large industrial conglomerate, the JSW Group. There's no problem if I name them, right? So there's a couple of business units that do all of their marketing with us. Now, as a group, as a brand name, they're one of the largest industrial companies in the country. Everything from paints to construction items, steel. Steel is one of their largest businesses. So now when we market for somebody like them, there's obviously the part that we find most difficult is in a lot of these old school or let's say traditional large enterprise industrial companies, there's a lot of different stakeholders to manage. So while JSW Group wants to be now known as a globally renowned company making some of the best steel supplied throughout the world made in India, there still is a reality to the kind of investments they have access to, the kind of competition they're up against when it comes to steel at a global stage. So yeah, I think one of those clients, and a lot of clients like this, they do have a lot of hierarchies and layers to go through when it comes to getting that output finally out there. But I mean, we've over the years also kind of mastered how to navigate around and work with them effectively. Yeah.
I think once you know the pulse of them, it is easy
correct.
to
That's
navigate. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I would now ask a question to Dharika. We are currently living in an age where creator gain millions of views overnight. Has virality replaced traditional public relations? Or does PR still play a role in creator and algorithm cannot replace it? What is your thoughts on that?
Interesting question. So I'll talk about myself. So when a lot of brands come to me, they say that, Dharika, you have 800K followers. Can you make this go viral? And then I say that, this is going to be something which is short term, right? A post can go viral, but it might not get the, the necessary engagement or the audience that you want to attract. I think it's more about authenticity and, being consistent in the journey. So virality can be a one-time thing. It can probably make a campaign go viral. But consistency and authenticity is the way to go, right? So when I give talk at colleges, I gave a webinar and I told them that who would you want to who's your persona? How would you want to write like? You would have certain figures in mind, and I said that you need to have your own USP, right? So if I'm writing in a certain, when you start replicating that, the authenticity is gone, right? So people want to see the real you, and not just another version of a person.
I would like to ask you a question. What do you think PR is?
Yes, I teach PR, so of course I have to answer this. So PR is...
Yes, the students are watching.
Yes. So PR is something which bridges the gap between the organization and its public and bring in a mutuality between people and the organization, or people and brand, or community.
That's the definition from 20 years ago.
Yes.
The books need to be updated.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The
yes.
question that you asked her was partly correct and partly wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
LinkedIn, digital, media, events are all part of creating a plan for reputation building. PR is reputation building. How do you build a reputation for a company? So how do you know that a PR individual sitting in a brand or an agency has not gotten in touch with Dharika and said, listen, write about this in this particular manner, and you create a campaign that also supports her back with it. And I will look at placing selective stories with selective influencers in media as well as other individuals who are influential, and help change the narrative of an entire conversation. That's the job of a PR manager. Yeah?
Thank you, Ma.
So that's an overarching view, and everything else is a vertical that fits into it. A smart PR professional who is now being called by different names, saying reputation manager, and the latest term is storyteller. I don't know what that means, but reputation managers are responsible for understanding what is impacting my audience, who's impacting my audience. How is the reputation of my company going to be affected if Dharika writes that post? How is the reputation of the brand and the leadership team that I have going to be affected if they put out a campaign for Jaipur Watch Company that looks at H&M? Yeah, that's the job, that's the role of a PR manager, then to bridge these two and make people understand, hey, we are not idiots, right? The company is not gone nuts with two different generations heralding, one talking about a watch in front of a flag and the other looking at sending out a campaign for that same company which looks like H&M. Because the audience is very intelligent. The audience will look at it and say, hey, something doesn't add up. If I have to create a story, creative storytelling, and look at bridging the gap between the two, then it falls under my radar. If I have to stop one versus the other, that also falls under my radar. Yeah? And that is why to look at not just existing, but flourishing in the field of PR, you need the 3 C's. Can anybody tell me what the 3 C's are? Come on, this is your time to show off your knowledge. Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth row, the lady with her hand on her chin. Yeah, there you have it. What are the 3 C's? Okay, she needs a sip of water before she decides to talk to us. Okay, the 3 C's, let me put it out to you. It's not anything that you thought. It's courage, confidence, and clarity. These are the 3 C's that you need, not just to exist in PR, but also to thrive in it, right? Clarity with the messaging that you want to put out. Confidence to say that message out loud and present it to your seniors. And courage to stand by that clarity. If you don't, then you will end up with 5 different verticals doing 5 different things, and the audience completely confused, and there is no buildup of trust that happens there. Yeah? One of the key roles of a good reputation manager or a PR manager is to look at building trust, building a reputation that is trustworthy. I can put all the hoardings out there, but if you don't trust the brand, then I failed at my job.
Thank you, ma'am. Of course, to a certain extent, there is a gap between the text and the theory, what we discuss in the class, and what practices like outside the world. So, how do we, like, what is your suggestion? How do we bridge this gap? Can you please share your views?
First of all, books need to be updated. If that's not a possibility, then let industry people come and actually talk to these students and help them understand how PR is evolving. What PR was 20 years ago, to 10 years ago, to 5 years ago, to 1 year ago is very different from what you guys are studying today. Writing a press release is not PR, right? And honestly, as I was telling you earlier, we do not hire in the industry from PR and comms courses anymore. Because we found that there is a huge gap in terms of learning from what they have studied to what the industry actually wants. We end up hiring students from psychology, from economics, from literature, right? Because there we look at people who have critical thinking, critical analysis. Everything, I can teach them how to write a press release, right? But I cannot teach them how to think. I cannot teach them to have the discipline to think, right? I cannot teach them to have the courage to actually present a paper which they truly believe in, and they have actually written it from their brains and not ChatGPT. Yeah? I cannot teach them not to cheat. Yeah? Literature, psychology, economics will not allow you to do that. Yeah? That is the honesty, credibility, and thinking level that we are looking at to be able to hire somebody in the industry. Yeah, I think the first question is the updation of books. The second question is get industry people to speak to them, to help them understand what it takes to actually survive. This degree will help you get a foot in the door. After that, it's completely up to you. Yeah? And the second is the attitude towards learning. We are an industry that's constantly evolving. Ask any of my co-panelists, they will tell you that they spend a lot of their time learning. We spend a lot of our time upskilling ourselves. But I've often found that, kids who are graduating for at least the last 5 years, their head has been filled with the fact that once you graduate from here, you don't need to study. Yes, you will always be studying because we look at studying human behavior. And if you are changing, that means the field is changing to adapt to you.
That is so true, ma'am. Once we graduate, we stop studying. That is what we used to think. But actually, I used to think, but there is no full stop for learning and studying and doing research. So moving on to Dharika again. Being very young and into entrepreneurship, can you tell us what is your experience of being young and into media industry?
It feels amazing wherever I go. I, had this thing that I'm the youngest in the room. I've had a lot of achievements, etc. It feels good. So in my case, I was lucky enough to build that network early in my college days, right? So for a lot of students, what they do is they wait until the last year to, build that network. At the time of their placement, when the teachers are pushing them, sure, you must be pushing your students to, just start applying, start reaching out to people. I remember speaking to 2-3 students on the core team yesterday, and they were like, ma'am, we're just dependent on the college placements, and, we don't know how to network to people. And I was like, when all of these panelists come, you should just, instead of being hesitant, you should just go to them, ask for that opportunity, and it should not just be limited to speaking to them once. You need to keep following up with them, and there could be a time wherein after 3-4 messages, I might have an opportunity for them, or she might have an opportunity for them, and she would say that, hey, I would want to hire you irrespective of whatever background you come from. So entrepreneurship has been fun. It's been a roller coaster ride. Being a 26-year-old, working with brands, running my agency, coordinating with the team, traveling, right? So it's fun. It's hard because you are accountable for your own actions, right? You can't put the blame on the person. I mean, if you're working in a company, you can simply say that, hey, ye to iski galti thi, right? But when you are running your own company, you need to be accountable for whatever you are doing, whatever, misdoings happen. So yeah, it's been fun.
In connection to that, what is your advice for our students? How do they build their personal branding in this like maybe, they are first year students, second year and final year students. Like, what is your advice on how do they start building their own personal branding from now?
So with respect to personal branding, start putting yourself out there in the market. So whenever someone comes up in the college or whenever you go out, do not miss the opportunity to network with people, right? Whenever you meet someone, just drop them a message saying that, hey, your words were very inspiring, would love to connect with you. Whatever opportunity you need, you just need to put yourself out there. Be shameless as possible, right? There would be certain people who would think that, we're not expert. You don't need to be an expert from day one, right? Just start building that network and you start getting active on LinkedIn. That is not because मैं कर रही हूँ and it's my bread and butter, but it's really, really important for you in terms of your future opportunities. Your first job could come from there, your mentor, anything, right? So it's very, very important to start updating your profile. I think most of you, how many of you were a part of the webinar that I took last month? कुछ changes करे? Have you guys updated your profile picture, headline, etc.? How has the experience been like? I think one of the students texted me saying that, a lot of people started reaching out to me. Someone, I don't know if Parth is there in the room. He mentioned that, he had removed, So he had removed the open to work banner from his profile picture and he said that, I think someone has reached out to you. You got an opportunity, right? You're just doing a thumbs up. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, can I add to that? Your personal brand, each one of your personal brands also reflects on the college, right? Your college's brand is made through you. And the first thing that starts, as she mentioned, was to listen to people who are actually here to spend their time with you. As the three of us are sitting here, we do notice each one of you. Now, if I can ask each one of you to look to your left, what's your left? Yeah? Look to your right. Notice the person next to you. Don't just look left and right. Again, let's do this again. Look to your left. See the person next to you. Notice the person next to you. Look to your right. Notice the person next to you. Do you see the ones that are sleeping? Do you see the ones that are snoring? The ones that are scratching their head? The ones that are digging their nose? We can see all that up here. Your reputation with us is built from there. Now, if you can just nudge the person on your left, nudge the person on your left. There, 1, 2, 3, third row. Nudge the person on your left. Nudge the person on your right. And tell them that your reputation is linked to your college's reputation, and your college's reputation with us is linked to each one of you and how you behave in this room. Yeah? So have you nudged each other enough? Yeah? Everybody's awake? Gentlemen out there who are sleeping with one hand, yep, there you are. Thank you for waking up. No need to look behind. I can see you from here. Come on, guys, we are spending our time with you here. Give us the respect of actually listening, staying awake and listening to us. If you are sleepy, you can please simply walk off, no problem. We are not here to take your attendance. Or you can grab a cup of coffee and come back. But don't disrespect us by sleeping right in front of us and snoring.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am, for waking
And we are going to pick out the people who are snoring. Okay?
Yes. So, ma'am is very particular about students who are interested can stay, rest of them can go. I can't say that. Yes. Moving on. So, I'll come to the theme of our panel discussion. So, the India, for decades, India is globally known for its it is associated with yoga and Bollywood and spirituality and Indian cuisine. Do you think India is still allowing the world to define its identity? Or are we finally beginning to define ourselves? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I can go first. So, butter chicken. Yeah. Like, as on today, right, I think we're well beyond the typical stereotypes of butter chicken, yoga, Bollywood. I mean, I think that's done and dusted. People know that's from India, and that's great. I think what the next generation of entrepreneurs or even government functions, etc., are all focusing and should be focusing on is highlighting what we're actually great at. Every time a relative of yours, a friend of yours comes back from a foreign country, right? And they're back home in India or whatever, if they live abroad. You know for a fact in the first 1 hour, one of the conversations you're going to have is how quickly Zepto delivers to your house. And this is something that's very unique to India. Similarly, all of you use UPI for payments. It's Indian-bound technology. And fintech in India in general is absolutely world-class. There is not a United States of America or a single European nation that even comes close to India in terms of the innovation and speed that we show when it comes to financial technology. It's a country of 1.5 billion people, right? So having the payment rails organized and actually secure to be able to enable that is absolutely fantastic. So I'm hoping for a world where, we move towards talking about these as India's highlights. On a global stage, and a lot of that's already happening. UPI is now available in a lot of Asian countries. A few countries in Europe have started piloting it. So that's again like a global payment chain. And we hadn't heard of anything but PayPal in the last 30 years. So we are the world's fastest growing economy in terms of large countries. And I think in line with that, the narrative has to definitely start changing in terms of what we talk about. And there are many other initiatives like this. ONDC, if you all have heard of from a digital commerce perspective. UPI I've already mentioned. Quick commerce and the way it's being implemented in India. I think a lot of these, really bring absolutely new talking points to the world. And it's not about Bollywood anymore, thankfully.
Yes, slowly the narrative is changing, but a long way to go.
And just to, last point, what Tarunji mentioned earlier, CJP, right? No one's talking about what, it's a PR thing again, that, the way celebrities came out after and at certain points in that entire CJP conversation. But the fact that the whole world today is talking about how democratic nations need to have a secondary conversation, and that's what CJP did in India. These are again, born in India initiatives that are creating a global framework. Other countries are going to follow suit, and hopefully we will get the due credit for it.
Yes, thank you. Anyone wants to answer this?
So times have indeed changed, right? We're no longer talking about just fitness and Bollywood. So fitness is being replaced by more fancy terms like high rocks, paddle, right, supper clubs, networking is being called as networking mixers, right? You meet founders, all of these things are happening. So I think we need to talk about the messy parts, right? So instead of talking about these cliche things, we can talk about how, a 20-year-old is building something. And how does entrepreneurship actually look like? It's not all glamorous that we see, right? We see Aman Gupta talking about boat and, how he's so passionate about building and all of these things. I think it's more about embracing the messy parts of us, about us building something, asking our friends out, all of these things.
Absolutely. If I may add to a point, while we talk about these several stories, and I think India is not one brand. It's a civilization, right? With multiple brand stories, with multiple narratives that can happen. However, as, if we were to brand India again, right? I would look at one story or a couple of stories, tell fewer stories and go deep within that story. But that story has to be ingrained into the brand's truth. So if we claim that we are X, and create a great marketing campaign all over it, right? It is going to collapse when it comes in contact with reality, right? It doesn't help because everybody who comes in is not going to believe what we say. Rather, let's look at a few truths that are there in our country and then look at creating a campaign around it. And the challenge that reputation campaigns face is to create a campaign without it looking like a campaign. Yeah? I'll give you a quick example. There are Okay, let me throw this question to the audience. Is there a country that you wished that is on your bucket list that you want to go to? What is that country? Give me names of a few countries. France, Paris, I'm assuming. Eiffel. Okay, what else? Norway. Switzerland. Brilliant. What else? Italy. Okay, all European countries. Great. Okay. Why do you want to go to Paris? Okay, Paris sells itself on romance. But anybody who's gone to Paris will tell you, hold your partner close, but hold your wallet closer. Milan, ditto. Beautiful architecture, lovely stuff, romantic. But you better have your wallet tucked inside you. Okay, I got robbed in Milan. Okay, so Singapore is a beautiful country, right? They don't sell themselves on romance. What do they sell themselves on? Technology, ease of doing business, women's safety, right? And when I went there, I was amazed at women roaming around at 2 o'clock in the night. My friends came to meet me at 3 a.m. and said, come out onto the road. As an Indian, that terrified me. Yeah? But I found when I went out at 3 o'clock in the night, the road was buzzing and everybody was fantastically happy walking around. Right? Because they did not sell themselves on romance. They sold themselves on these particular things. Yeah? Somebody mentioned Switzerland. Right? Switzerland was one of the countries that what do they sell themselves on? Why do you want to go to Switzerland? You want to go there and pose in a sari. Right? Look at Bollywood. It has sold Switzerland to you with romance. It sold you on chocolates. It sold you on those beautiful locations. But they have not sold you, they've not told you that they charge their citizens 40% of their income taxes 40% and above. Because everything else is free and they're happy living there. Yeah? Your reality, what you put out there in terms of reputation versus what reality is supposed to match. If they sold themselves on 40% taxation and safety of women or talking about the thieves that roam around in Eiffel Towers, you would never go there. Yeah? So what you sell out there, the campaign that you create has to resonate when people walk into that country and resonate with it. Similarly, for India, we are still struggling to find that one story, that one truth that could possibly be ingrained. It also has its challenges because we are so many states bound together, so many cultures bound together. But I do believe that there is a possibility of a few stories to come out which will actually help create our brand.
Thank you, ma'am. Unless we find a good story to tell about our own country, I think we can't sell ourselves. Right, one last question to all the panel members. Since we have young students here and some of them are ready to go into the industry and start working and some of them are already into some internships, what would be your advice to them to start working on their portfolio or start working on their skills? What would be your advice to them to become a good professionals, whatever the area they choose to? We will start with Siddhartha.
Yeah, I just going to keep this short and sweet. Don't overthink it. That first internship, first job, it may seem like an amazing opportunity or it may seem like, hey, this wasn't my first choice. But honestly, just don't overthink it. Your career will anyway find its way. And any job you do or any internship you do, at the end of the day, it's what you make of it. So I think go in heads first with an open mind to learn and you'll figure it out on your own.
I just have 3 things to say. Number 1, do not follow the herd, right? If your friend is going for a specific company and you feel, oh, this is so cool, oh, I want to be in the same company with him or her, right? Don't make that mistake. Number 2, please focus on the brand name instead of the package that you're getting in the initial years of your career, right? Right after college, don't go after the money. I mean, of course, money is important, but the brand name or the position that you're getting at the company is really important. And number 3, follow your passion, whatever you're passionate about. Thank you.
I'm going to go more basic. Learn to read, write, and listen. I'm not kidding. So I run PRPOI, which is India's largest voluntary upskilling community. We've been running it for 9 years now, and we are 13,000 people strong. You will not believe, through podcasts, through live sessions, through articles that we have done, it all falls down to these 3 things that they want candidates to do. Learn to really listen and not fall asleep in the first bench. Learn to really read to absorb and understand. And what's the last one? Learn to write. Because if you read good things, you will be able to write good things. You'll be able to speak good things, right? Otherwise, it's garbage in and garbage out. And irrespective of where you land up, in whichever role, those are the 3 things that everybody will judge you on. Each and every one will judge you on these basic skills. When you walk into a PR agency or a digital agency or a personal branding agency, they're not expecting you to, create a strategy and go get the corner cabin and look at getting into a client meeting and saying like super intelligent things. No, nobody's expecting you to do that, at least for the first 6-7 months of your career. The only thing they're expecting you to do is you read to understand, you listen to understand, and you actually write something that is sensible and not generated out of an LLM. Okay? So if you continue to do this, and we still do that in our careers today, if you continue to do this and learn not to fall asleep in the first bench, I think you are good.
Thank you, panel members, for enlightening us on various aspects of PR and branding and also startups and digital media communication.